ever given or donated to a charity? Now, what if I was to ask you that same question just a little bit differently? Have any of you ever invested in a nonprofit business? Sounds quite a bit different, doesn't it? I have worked in the nonprofit industry for over 25 years, and much has changed during that time. It was once enough to count the number of people you served or how much food you delivered into the community. But today it is much different. We are now asked to show impact or true change. But how do you measure the impact of helping an elderly woman transition into a new home? This was the case for a veteran's widow that we were able to help. Her husband had served in the military for over 20 years, but he hadn't signed up for spousal benefits. So when he passed, she was left without the financial means to maintain her home and an obvious hole in her heart. How do you measure the impact of that one smile you get from that child that you're able to help through the foster care system? This was the case for a young girl who touched my heart. She was smart, beautiful. She could have done anything she set her mind to. But her home life did not support this. Her mother used to sell her medication, and she'd use that money, sometimes for food, other times for drugs. And then, as that young girl got a little bit older, her mother traded her daughter's services for a place to sleep. These things have no special barometer to measure the change that we create in people's lives. Yet, we must show our investors that their investment is making a difference. Today, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the wonderful world of nonprofits and why it's important to understand the economic impact they have and understand what is needed for them to operate as a business. In recent years, there has been a transition to ask nonprofits to operate more as a business. And you would think this is great news. We all know the recipe for a successful business. Hire the right talent, market your product, take risks to be innovative, and of course, money. It takes time to grow your business, improve your product, or develop new ideas. Nonprofits raise the revenue to do their amazing work in a much different way. Two of the most common are grants or donations. Grants typically come in the format of federal, philanthropic companies, or foundations. Each of these has their own restrictions. And by restrictions, I mean the number of times you may receive them or the length of time you have to use them. I won't go into much detail about federal grants. I will leave it as simply as this. We usually have to hire another person to either manage the grant, collect the data, or to cover the increase in our product use. Philanthropic companies and foundations can also be a great revenue source, but these too have restrictions. One investor wants minimal information. Another is asking you for more than the first, and still yet a third investor is asking you for a completely different set of business metrics than you are even looking at. On the other side of these limits are the limits in how the money can be spent. There are often limits on salary, marketing, and overhead costs. Do we learn to operate within these limits? Yes, of course we do. The work we do is too important to not oblige every limit that is set. We understand how much each dollar changes a life in our area of passion. Do we measure every metric that our businesses ask us to? Of course, to the best of our ability. Because remember, they are our actual customer. They are the ones giving the nonprofit the revenue to do their amazing work. In the business world, you sell your product to create revenue. And then you use that money to invest and strengthen and grow your business. The other format of revenue for nonprofits is donations. Donations come in the format of corporate or individuals. Corporate donations may match their employees' giving, or they may choose a cause to stand behind. Think about Stella Artois, a beer company, teaming up with water.org. For every glass of Stella Artois you purchase, we shall provide 5 years of clean water for a person in need. Can you imagine a better way to support clean water? Purchase a glass or drink a beer or two? The other revenue source is individuals that contribute to the nonprofit causes. But this too has limitations. Many individuals do not want to fund salaries or overhead costs. Many want to ensure that every dollar goes directly to the person in need. But what they don't understand is what is needed to truly ensure the success of the business. Nonprofits are the third largest industry and the fastest growing sector of business. In 1980, there were 320,000 nonprofits doing business. Today, we have over 1.7 million nonprofits doing business. This is important to understand because nonprofits provide an economic impact, not just in the number of jobs, but in the service that they provide. And the tax dollars that are saved when a nonprofit is successful in what they do. Did you know that a person who receives governmental services, whether it's incarceration, Medicaid, or food stamps, can cost us up to $31,000 a year? If a nonprofit is able to change that person's life, it is a great savings to our communities. Compensation is another area that nonprofits are often restricted in. Have you ever seen that Facebook post that shows the top salaries of the nonprofit CEOs? This upsets a lot of people if it is too high. But what they fail to realize is these people are running multi-million-dollar businesses. Would you stop drinking Coke or using Google if you felt their CEOs made too much? Of course not. And these limits are not just for the CEOs, but also for the other employees. Remember, 11.9 million jobs are created by nonprofits. 1 out of every 10 workers is working for a nonprofit. They should be entitled to a livable wage. As a nonprofit worker, you are often told you will not be financially compensated for creating good change in the world. Your payment is merely the feeling of knowing you've done good. We're often told if you wanted to make money, you should have gone into the real business world. Many are not making enough to cover the basics. Many nonprofits I've worked for have had employees that qualify for the same services they are advocating for. They are not making enough to cover the basics. And in the business world, when you have a good employee, you invest in them. not just through wage compensation, but through training and opportunities. Training budgets are often limited for a nonprofit. This is considered an extra. The other area that nonprofits are limited in is advertising. Advertising and marketing are areas that nonprofits are frowned upon for spending in. But what happens when you don't market your product? Let's take nonprofit out of the equation and think just for a minute of developing a product for our business. We would research and analyze the market need, produce the product, and then we would market it. If our customer doesn't know about our product, it fails. If our customer is dissatisfied with our product, it fails. Okay, let's put nonprofit back into the equation. If nonprofits do not invest in advertising and marketing, then our customer never sees what their dollar does. They never see how they've changed a life or helped a family through crisis. We limit our nonprofits in many more ways than we can cover today. But what would happen if our nonprofits went away? What would happen to all those jobs and services created by nonprofits? Who would step in to lead the fight for veterans, the cure for diseases, or the financial stability of those in need? We are left with an ever-growing industry of nonprofits to try and fill the gaps. We must update our vision of what a nonprofit is and understand what is needed for it to operate as a business. We must understand that in order to conquer big issues such as hunger or homelessness, we need the best and brightest minds. We can't be using equipment that is 20 years outdated. And it can no longer be taboo for a nonprofit to invest in marketing, fundraising, or to have overhead costs in running a program. You, as the investors, must see your donation as an investment in your passion to change the world, whether it be a cure for cancer, stopping domestic violence, or changing education. We all have our need of what needs to be changed in the world. We all have our passion about what needs to be changed in the world. Let's start by changing our thinking of how we value our nonprofits and how we invest in them. I'm asking you to think a little differently, not just when you choose a nonprofit, but what you want your investment to do. See us as a business. Trust us to know our industry. Allow us to be innovative in our approach. And encourage us to find true solutions. If not, we will be challenged to create real change. And our nonprofits will struggle to survive. Please, I ask you today to not just think a little differently about how you invest, but to understand the economic impact our nonprofits have and how your investment can make a real difference. Thank you.